Great. My name is Andre Bro. I'm on staff at One Acadiana, and we're pleased to bring you our fourth installment of the Acadiana Business Resource Webinar Series. These webinars are brought to you by business resource partners from across the Acadiana region, including One Acadiana, LIDA, Opportunity Machine, the Downtown Development Authority, the Louisiana Small Business Development Center at UL Lafayette, Acadiana Workforce Solutions, the United Way of Acadiana, and other local chambers and economic development offices from around the Acadiana region. We have come together to support Acadiana's business community, particularly our small businesses, in response to COVID-19 by hosting a series of webinars on timely and relevant topics. Today's fourth installment of our Acadiana Business Resource Webinar Series is presented by Susheel Kumar, Public Information Officer for the SBA Office of Disaster Assistance. And he will present on COVID-19 assistance for self-employed individuals and others. After the presentation, we will use the remaining time for Q&A. As you have questions, please enter them into the chat bot, which can be accessed using the chat bubble icon. We will be recording the questions as we go. If we do not have time to get to your question during today's webinar, we will follow up with you as soon as possible afterwards, and we will try to compile a list of questions and answers to share with everyone. Without further ado, I will now turn it over to Susheel Kumar to kick off our presentation.
First and foremost, Andre, thank you for hosting this. Appreciate your hospitality. And to all the attendees on the phone, can you hear me, folks? Can you hear me, Andre?
Yes.
Perfect. Just want to make sure. Thank you. I got your thumbs up. And you're assisting me with the slide presentation piece, if there is one.
Yes. So just signal me when to go to the next slide, please.
Let's go forward now. Appreciate it. So basically what I want to talk to you folks is about our economic injury disaster loan. As a result of this unprecedented, unparalleled, unbelievable economic disruption, economic shortfall, the Small Business Administration acted on its own accord and its agency authority to declare the state of Louisiana an economic disaster and the Governor Certification Program. What it basically means in simple English is the entire state of Louisiana and all of its parishes can apply for economic injury. Next slide, please. Just be on the lookout, prior to me starting my presentation, just be on the lookout for lookalike websites, links that will take you to the wrong website, to some other agency, in this case, nefarious, where they may be looking for personal information, so just be on the lookout for it. Next, please. That's who I was referring to in terms of the administrator who approved the agency declaration. Next, please. What is it about? It's a working capital loan. In essence, for those folks who are on this call, the definition of working capital is current assets minus current liabilities. There's a number that comes up, and that's a working capital. In plain English, it's basically your source of funds or liquidity that's available after your bills are paid. And there's a certain minimum number that you need to have to meet the demands of ongoing bills which are coming in, even though there's no revenue coming in at this stage of the game. That's where our loan comes into play. Maximum $2 million, fixed interest rate of 3.75% for businesses. For private nonprofits, 2.75%. And Andre, as you mentioned, for those folks who have rental real estate, who want to apply because their source of income, rents, have been disrupted, they're very much eligible to apply for this particular program to seek the revenue disruption that they've experienced. Next, please. Some examples: hotels, obliterated; recreational facilities, obliterated; charter boards, manufacturers, sports vendors, rental property, restaurants, retailers, souvenir shop, travel agency. I can't think of any one particular industry that has not been obliterated as a result of COVID-19. So our attempt and our desire and our focus is a targeted approach for economic injury for all those businesses that have been mentioned in the form of an economic injury disaster loan. A physical presence in the area is required. In this particular case, the entire state has been declared, and so are the contiguous states. So If you're on the border, Arkansas's got you covered. If you're on the border, Texas got you covered. If you're on the Mississippi side, you got it covered. All 50 states have declarations. So as a result, the criteria of physical presence is moot. Secondly, on your application, there'll be a place for you to list where your business operates out of. Please don't list the P.O. box. Next, please. Substantial business risk. That is the definition between eligibility for someone who is an economic concern versus someone who's not. Since we posted this slide, there's been substantial updates, and you'll see further down on our website that sole proprietors are always eligible, but the gig economy is represented, independent contractors are represented. So this particular substantial business risk equation is at this stage been outdated as a result of our streamlining as recently as a couple of days ago. Literally yesterday's the most recent update. Next, please. Certain religious organizations. Church by itself is ineligible, but a church with a school, a daycare, some sort of service provided, certainly eligible. Some ineligibility concerns might be marketing cooperatives, charitable organizations, gambling, casinos. Next, please. Speculative activities, real estate developers. I saw this particular question in another webinar where someone said, you know, I subdivide lots and I build them, and as a result, I can't sell the lots. It's speculative because undeveloped lots don't qualify. But on the other hand, if you're a real estate developer and you have a strip mall, you have warehouses, you have office space, things along those lines, and rents have been disrupted as a result of this economic disruption, absolutely need to apply. Now, for those individuals who have multiple homes, which are all rented, they too can apply for economic injury. Next, please. Certain lobbying concerns, services of a sexual nature, things along those lines are not eligible for economic injury disaster loans. Change in ownership. There have been times when folks will say, you know, Andre has got better credit than Susheel, so Susheel is going to minimize his ownership in the company, and 90% is now Andre, Susheel's 10%, so Andre will guarantee, Susheel won't guarantee because of his credit situation. That is a no-no. The way the entity was prior to the disaster is the way we're going to be doing it going forward. Next, please. Very key slide, refinancing long-term debt. So for those folks who are very savvy with the accounts payable side of the balance sheet, this is pretty much a no-brainer. Accounts payable captures your amounts which are current on the current side of the liability section. So in other words, your vendors, who you owe, when you owe, how much you owe, and if there's a purchase money security interest in that particular transaction. Any and all items which fall in the injury period, defined as February 15th and later, is considered injury period. And if you haven't had a chance to pay your bills because of it, then those would be potential eligible concerns. What is not eligible is your long-term truck note, your long-term mortgage note, current portion long-term debt due, which is defined as 12 months of your long-term debt. So let's say you have a 5-year note and you've paid into it 3 years. You've got 2 more years to go. One of those years, so 12 months worth of payments, will show up on your current side, and those are eligible. You can't use the money to pay delinquent tax debt, if you will, or pay down any other expensive debt. So in other words, you can't borrow at 375 and exercise arbitrage and pay down a 5% note with the bank. That's ineligible uses of proceeds. Next, please. What's a good criterion? Well, the acceptable criterion is satisfactory repayment in terms of cash flow, and also reasonable credit history. What does that mean? If you pay your bills on time and there's sufficient cash flow, for the most part, the loan is yours. And we talked about eligibility being the fact that your injury is very specific to the fact that you can't pay your bills on time because of COVID-19. Next, please. How much can you borrow? Maximum statutory amount is $2 million. Interest rates are fixed. Private nonprofits, 2.75%. Small businesses, the definition is listed down below. If you click on the hyperlink, 3.75% fixed. Next, please. And it can be used to pay, we talked about fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that would have been paid had COVID-19 not struck. Next, please. There is no real estate collateral requirement. It's being funded for up to $500,000. 6 months worth of working capital or the greater of the two, no more than $500,000. No fees, no points, no closing costs, no prepayment penalty, and your first payment is due in 12 months. And there is no obligation to take the loan if offered, but keep in mind that keeping your business viable and operational is really the mindset behind offering these temporary sources of liquidity. Next, please. How to apply? They've been recently updated. SBA.gov/disaster. Take a look at it. If I'm able to share my screen, I'll be able to show that to you also momentarily. Next, please. Next, please. Those are documents which are required had it been the old way. Next, please. Next, please. Those are the application forms. Just keep an eye on what some of the entries might be, what kind of questions they may be asking. Some of these questions are being asked on the web portal. Next, please. This is basically the summation of what we're trying to gauge as to what COVID-19 has done to your company. Are you able to enlarge that, Andre, perhaps? Or are you going to be sharing these slides with everyone else?
I'll be sharing the slides with everyone after. I'm not able to enlarge this right now.
No problems at all, sir. Appreciate you. Next, please. Next, please. As I mentioned, recheck the business loan application and the idle supporting information to make sure the information is accurate. Some of the reconsideration, the expression is reconsideration. If your loan's has been denied, they're taking a second look at some of the applicants who have submitted their application in the past few days. You'll be contacted by the SBA that your application is being reconsidered. Next, please. So is this a good time for me to share my screen as to what the new website looks like, or do you want to do it, Andre?
So if you bear with me, Susheel, I'm going to make you the presenter.
Yes, sir.
So you should, at this point, have the ability to share your screen with everyone.
Okay, just bear with me. That's what the new website looks like. Can you folks see it?
Yes.
Okay. So when you go, it's been extremely streamlined. So basically, all the topics that I discussed in my slide presentations captured in eligible entity. So you pick bullet point number 1 if you're a business with no more than 500 employees. If you're an individual who's a sole proprietor, with or without employees, or an independent contractor, would pick bullet point number 2. Cooperatives, aquaculture, with no more than 500 would put bullet point number 3. ESOP would be 4. Tribal concerns, 5. If you're a business, 6. If you're a business with more than 500, that'd be 7. If you're a private nonprofit, you would attest to the last bullet point. I mentioned certain ineligible entities. You would self-certify, and then you would continue forward. Now, when you continue forward, if you look, up top it says business information. So the application that you folks saw on the presentation, some or all of that information is required in that particular category. The business owner's information, some or all of those forms that we bypassed may be required on it. Any additional information that you want the underwriter to take a look at, and then summary, and then hit the submit button. Let me take you back for a moment to the previous screen to have you take a look at the most recent development. And as Andre might know, when we talked briefly last week, Andre and Heidi, we were dealing with a different set of parameters. Things have literally turned 180 degrees, if not more. This is COVID-19 most recent update, and you see the words "and loan advance." They're eligible for an economic injury disaster loan advance of up to $10,000. We're providing small businesses with working capital loans up to $2 million. The loan advance will provide economic relief to businesses that are currently experiencing a temporary loss of revenue. Funds will be made available within 3 days of a successful application, and this loan advance will not have to be repaid. And so when you type in SBA.gov and apply, this is where you come to. You would come to the very top of the page. This is what you'll see. You want to click this right here, Economic Injury Disaster Loan and Loan Advance. And it'll take you to this spot right here on the web, which is right below it. Click up top, and there you are. So how do I feed the screen back to you, sir?
I will go ahead and reclaim the ball from you. So
thank you, sir.
All right. And at this point, I think we have a good bit of time for questions. I'm going to turn it over to Heidi Melanson of the Louisiana Small Business Development Center at UL Lafayette. And Heidi is going to moderate our Q&A portion with Susheel. Please continue to enter questions you have into the chat bot and select everyone from the Send To menu so that our presenters can see your questions.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of great questions. That's going to definitely put us on that path to be able to apply. But some of the questions that we have right now, Susheel, and then I'm probably going to add some to this as well, is the first one is from Robin. And this is going to bring us into she has one about the Paycheck Protection Plan. Will having an economic injury development disaster loan prevent us from getting the Paycheck Protection Plan loan?
The way I'm going to answer it, we don't have talking points on the paycheck protection. We just don't. Here are the 2 bullet points that I'm aware of, and I'll briefly speak about it and then pull right back. The Paycheck Protection Program is being administered by the district office and participating banks, number 1. Second bullet point that I have is cannot use 2 separate programs to pay the same set of bills. In other words, I can't borrow from Paycheck Protection to pay for the same personnel expenses that I've already asked for and SBA has provided to pay those bills. Those are the only 2 bullet points I have to offer at this stage of the game. I would encourage you folks to reach out to Michael Ricks, michael.ricks@sba.gov to get additional detail. I'm aware that he doesn't have talking points either because he's waiting from the same source as I, which is the SBA headquarters in Washington. As soon as we have it, Heidi, you'll be the first one to have it. And I'm sure you can pass it on to your colleagues, Andre, and everyone else.
All right. Good answer. Okay, we have another question from Greg. If I have an LLC that owns rental property, would I choose option 1 or 2 on the actual application? And I think it's probably going to be 1.
Let me minimize you and I would apply under a business because LLC is a form of business, just like you correctly pointed out, Heidi.
It would be number 1, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Isn't that what you said?
Yes, correct. Number 1 would be the right answer.
There have been very few times, Heidi, that you've been wrong, and I can't recall the times you were wrong. So when in doubt, rule number 2 is when in doubt, check rule number 1. Heidi's always right.
Okay, we have a question from Renee. What documentation will be required for proof of amount needed under the loan?
We're not currently asking for any documentation to prove injury. A maximum 6 months worth of working capital is being awarded upfront. Awarded, eligibility, approved is probably all synonyms of the approval process. So if your working capital requirement corresponding period this time last year was $10,000 a month, You'll be automatically approved for 6 months of it, which is $60,000. So no need to send in your documentation that you've lost X amount. We're going to front it, maximum 6 months of working capital right into your bank account directly from the Treasury.
And will that be based on their tax returns?
It'll be based on their Form 1368 that they'll fill out and their income statement and their balance sheet that they submit for the corresponding period along with the Form 1368.
Okay, got you. We have another question. I think this may be for Andre, but are other webinars going to be available?
Yes. So this is the fourth in our series. We're working with other business resource partners from across the region to plan future webinars. So please stay tuned for more information about those.
Okay. Thank you.
And Andre, if I may make a standing acceptance, if you want to let me know what dates and times, I'll be glad to help be a presenter at other future functions because the needs of the business and as the conditions change so rapidly, I'd like to make myself available to Heidi and to your team at One Acadiana. So feel free to indulge me.
We appreciate that very much.
And I think on the next question, Susheel, we may have that answer. It says, if I am an independent contractor who does not take a salary, i.e. payroll, how would we calculate the payroll? But you kind of answered that on the 6 months.
The way to address that would be, first of all, you would choose your sole proprietor, bullet point number 2. And secondly, after that, if you want to submit additional documentation, very specific to say, I take a draw, that particular draw has to be recurring, ongoing, and consistent. If it's recurring, ongoing, and it's drawn out on your financial statements, no need to send it in. If it's an unusual draw that you're trying to seek, you'll have to explain under extraordinary circumstances that you're needing X, Y, and Z to do X, Y, and Z with those funds.
Got you. Thank you. And I think this one is for Andre. Someone has missed a lot of the presentation. Will we be giving this one out, or will they be able to get this information on your website?
Yes, we're going to post the video recording and presentation materials on the website with the full disclaimer that, as Susheel mentioned, this information is changing rapidly. Everything is evolving quickly. So by the time someone views it, of course, details may have changed a little bit. So we want to make sure to provide that disclaimer. But as soon as the video recording is available, which does take up to 24 hours, we'll follow up with everyone to send the recording as well as the slide deck and other materials.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question. Maybe any advice for a sole proprietor or professional with no payroll other than themselves? Is there applying for a small business loan, or is there other assistance that may be available?
Don't have any visibility of other resources. If you're a sole proprietor and you've endured economic injury, my humble suggestion is apply, and get the funds that you're eligible for, and don't leave any money on the table. To put it in perspective, completely put it on perspective, let's take a look at the fact that we have the Federal Reserve backstopping the United States Treasury, which is one of the deepest and most fluid market in the world. This is unprecedented. So when you have that type of environment, not applying might be more of a pain than you possibly realize. So my humble suggestion, please apply for the maximum, which is what the SBA will fund you, and use it for the purpose intended.
Okay. This caused a lot of confusion yesterday in this particular question. Is there a deadline of March 31st related to the economic injury disaster loan?
Repeat that for me, Heidi, please.
Okay. My phone blew up yesterday. There was information that was circulating about the deadline of the economic injury disaster loan. And many people heard March 31st in the marketplace. I don't know from where. Would you elaborate on deadlines?
The only deadline that I'm aware of is literally in the third week of December 2020. I saw the same thing, And late last night, I put a phone call into a local bank in the area, and I asked a question. The banker in question said, "I don't know, I was told." And my comment was, please advise your business banking clients there is no such deadline for tomorrow, the 31st. None whatsoever.
Thank you for that, because I think that's what caused a lot of confusion yesterday.
Absolutely. So in other words, there is no deadline today. It says there's a deadline for March 31st. There is no deadline for March 31st that I'm aware of. I could not track down anywhere, shape, or form. And if there was a deadline, we would have been notified as to, hey, guys, and that doesn't make any sense. So, Heidi, you have the most recent press release that we sent out to you? In other words, when the state of Louisiana was declared back, I think it was on Thursday the 19th, I think it was. And if you look at that, the deadline very clearly states December 19th, I believe it is. That's correct. That's the deadline we want to work with.
Okay. Okay, another question. I have an LLC. This is from, I think, from Michelle, and I am the sole owner. I self-contract with another business and provide my services within that business. I have lost my income. Can I apply for income loss?
Income loss is another phrase that's used very commonly. It's called economic injury. An economic injury for sole proprietors is available. Please apply. That would be bullet point number 2 on our website.
Okay, great. Okay, here's another one from Gwen. Can I only receive the grant, the advance, and not the loan? And if so, how do I apply for the grant?
The grant in itself, the short answer is apply. And the minute you apply, the grant gets sent out to you, and there is no expectation that the loan be used. If $10,000, maximum $10,000, and again, not everyone gets a maximum $10,000. It's $1,000 per employee, if I recall correctly. If you're sole prop and you're only one person, you apply. They'll look at what financial statements you're provided, and they see that you're only one person. The maximum amount that you'll be getting is $1,000, not $10,000. So if $1,000 cures your issue, there it is.
Okay, so it's not an automatic $10,000 that's sent out.
Correct. It's up to $10,000, and it depends, and my understanding, it depends on the number of employees that you have. So hypothetically, Heidi, if it was just you, yourself, and you only get, even though there's 3 of you, you only get $1,000 at the most.
Okay.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. There are 4 different phone numbers being used, and there are chats right now with people who are not connected to this at all, just waiting for it to start. So I'm not sure if y'all are aware that the call-in phone lines are just filled with people who are waiting for this to start.
Great. Well, for anyone that was not able to connect, we did have some connection issues. We understand today. We are going to be sending around the video recording and presentation materials afterwards. I will post the primary dial-in number into the chat bot right now. Once again, WebEx did give us a few alternate lines, but we understand those might not be working. So I'm going to go ahead and post the primary dial-in number for anyone trying to connect by phone. And as I said, we'll be sure to send the follow-up materials afterwards. We apologize for any inconvenience.
I'll let them know. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Susheel, I have one from Michelle. Can you apply and get unemployment benefits and then also apply for the Paycheck Protection Plan or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan?
The only bullet point I was able to make in the past was that you cannot apply for economic injury and Paycheck Protection Act and borrow funds for the same purpose, which is make payroll. I am not aware of the unemployment insurance part because it's outside my area of expertise.
Yeah.
I would urge you to contact your local business resource to find out more details about it.
Okay.
Perhaps SBDC could share some light on it with your contacts, Heidi?
Yes, we can get that. I'm sure Workforce Development is involved as a resource partner, and I'm sure Andre can get some information out to everyone.
Thank you very much.
Okay, this one's a kind of combination that we have from Todd, and I think you addressed the grant involved in the economic injury loan. And then what's the criteria to receive it, which you did also address it, and maybe you can elaborate. But if as an owner of your restaurant is on payroll for working as a manager or in the kitchen, is it still okay to receive payments from this grant or loan?
Of course, you're on the payroll. It's your money. It's your business. And if you're taking normal shareholder distributions for the purposes of keeping you and your family afloat, and you are a legitimate piece of the personnel expenses, payroll expenses, and you take your draw, of course.
Thank you. Okay, another one from Renee. If you own more than one business that was affected, can you apply for each business entity?
Yes, maximum $2 million for each entity.
Is it 2 million aggregate for an individual or for each business?
Each business. So Heidi Incorporated is 2 million. Heidi LLC is 2 million. Heidi Partnership is 2 million, as long as it does not all get aggregated under Heidi Macro Holdings.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have another question from Garrett, and it's on unemployment, and I think we'll get some information out to you, Garrett, on LA Works as well. Go down to another one that we might have. I already submitted the application and rejected the $10,000 advancement because I was concerned it would interfere with my option for the CARES Act. At that time, I was unaware that it was forgivable. How will this affect me on the back end, and will I still be offered the $10,000?
You know, when the question is posed, how will it affect me? That involves a level of my understanding of the person's, wherewithal and their personal circumstances. Since I'm not aware, I won't make any comment about how it affects. But the CARES Act is being administered by the district office, and that talking points would come from Michael Ricks. In terms of economic injury, disaster loan from the SBA, strongly urge you to apply and get the funds that you need. It is a working capital installment loan with fixed interest rate that addresses your needs in the long term, which is 12 months. In other words, your first payment is not due for 12 months. The repayment is maximized at a 30-year maximum. And this is really meant for all of your working capital needs, all of your personnel needs, payroll needs, and so on and so forth. So humbly put, please apply, find out what you qualify for, and if you're approved, you'll get 6 months worth of working capital into your account, along with a maximum of $10,000 grant into your bank account if you qualify.
Okay, great, thank you. Another question that we have, my company's workforce is largely subcontractors. Which would be best to suggest to them, an SBA loan or to apply for unemployment, or both?
I would encourage you to, again, I have no visibility on unemployment. I do have visibility on my program, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Please apply and find out what you qualify for, pay your people, pay your vendors, so that when you are being told to reopen by your appropriate state authority, you're ready to hit the ground running.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have one from Pierre. How can I check the status of my loan application?
1-800-659-2955.
They would have to call the 1-800 number, correct?
Correct.
Also, I think I'll just add to this one. On Friday, Susheel, I think I was told that if they did not get an application number, then it was not accepted. Is that correct?
I've heard variations of that. I was told the most recent talking points I have about folks who have not heard back is that if the SBA reaches out to you, they'll encourage you to reapply. If you haven't heard, you're in the processing queue.
Gotcha. Okay, because that was a big concern yesterday, was the fact that on Thursday and Friday, when they had the alternative way of uploading documents, that it was a possibility. Okay. Here's another question from, if I have two businesses, one as an independent contractor and the other as a brick and mortar business, do I apply twice? And I think you had made that clear. Yes, you apply twice, or would I combine the applications?
Well, as we talked about, Heidi, if it's a separate entity and they have separate EINs, separate tax returns, and there is no aggregation of tax returns, in other words, it doesn't get combined into one master return, and then you apply twice. If not, you only apply once.
Got you. Okay. This might be one you can elaborate on is if I was able to pay my employees through this loan, should they not apply for unemployment while we are in the process for this loan?
Mathematically, if you're paying your people, they wouldn't qualify for unemployment because you're getting paid.
Correct. Okay, another question. When will we have to submit the other forms after submitting the short form on the disaster loan assistance website?
I broke up a little bit when you were beginning to start to ask the question. Try me again.
When will we have to submit the other forms, the supporting documentation, after submitting the short form on the disaster loan assistance website?
There was a little bullet, I think it was number 4 before submission. It says additional information. You would write down your additional details there. Or if you've done it and you got more that's forthcoming, talk to your underwriter when they call you and ask you for additional information.
And that, just to add on to that, how will they be contacted? Will it be via email or would it be a telephone call?
I am not aware of what their mode of contact is. I'm being told that they're being contacted, some via email, some by phone, and I can't tell what drives what.
Okay. I think there was a little, I think on the scam side, it was probably just something that they wanted to know.
Absolutely. I could totally concur. I would want to know too.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. We have another question, and this is for a real estate company. Will this loan help us pay our independent contractors who work on commission? I'm assuming like a realtor, or do they each need to apply to cover any loss of income?
Very good question. On the website, it lists the independent contractors being able to seek monies for their economic injury. So if I were the subcontractor, I would apply on the website, mention that they're not getting paid by the real estate developer, and go from there. Now, the real estate developer could seek monies for what he is owed from his accounts payable, or in this case, accounts receivable, and so each of them would apply differently.
Thank you. Okay, also, my business has a P.O. box. Would I use the physical address of the business? I contract for this contract on, for this application. Would it be P.O. or could they use, if they don't get their mail in a physical way?
The difference between the P.O. box and the physical address is they want to know where your physical address is. So example, 123 Main Street, Lafayette is where you actually operate, and you collect your mail at P.O. Box 250 down the street of the U.S. Post Office. They want to differentiate the two.
Okay, excellent. Also, they're saying, here's another question from Jenny. Can you please provide the website that a sole proprietor LLC could find this information? But I think it would be the same for everyone, correct?
The same, everyone. Bullet point number 2 for sole props and independent contractors.
Okay, great. I think also, where is the grant application? Could you elaborate on how they apply for the grant grant within the application?
There is no grant application, as you might know, Heidi. It's applying for the loan, and as part of the loan, whether you're approved or not, a $10,000 advance is being up to $10,000 is being granted within a few days after application, and you don't have to pay it back if the loan is denied. So there is no grant per se. You have to apply for the economic injury, and based on your head count, monies are being dispensed up to a maximum of $10,000.
Got you. Okay, there's another question on the Paycheck Protection Plan. Would you like to take that on or just pass on that one?
I'd like to pass on that one because I have no talking points and I don't want to speak out of turn and mislead the listening public because that would be irresponsible of me.
Okay.
So stand by for additional talking points from the district office or other credible source.
And I think that would be a great webinar is when we actually have it in our marketplace, is to be able to get some more information on that program.
Concur, Heidi, totally concur.
Okay. And here's another question. If you are an individual sole proprietor as an LLC and you're contracted out to another company, but have had your rate decreased, can you apply for help? That would be
that is an economic question. A negotiated rate is negotiated and not as a result of COVID. If your services, when that's getting into the weeds, have them apply and see what they qualify for.
Okay, thank you.
Because it's, you know, if I were to offer my services to Andre at 15 and I'm offering my services to you for 12, and the question then becomes, is it COVID related? Is that why you're discounting it? Or am I trying to purchase market share by discounting my services? If it's the latter, it's not COVID. If it's the former, you don't qualify. So instead of me determining what the eligibility might be, let them apply and find out what they qualify for.
Great. And we have a question from Courtney, and I think you did elaborate on this. And it's not in the weeds on the Paycheck Protection Plan, but will a business be able to finance only payroll related expenses with the economic injury disaster loan under the PPP loan? Or will they be able to keep the remaining operating expenses on the economic injury disaster loan? Meaning, like, you could have one under the economic injury loan and then have one under the Paycheck Protection Plan, as long as they're not double dipping on the expenses, correct?
Let me speak about, again, the economic injury piece of it. The economic injury disaster loan is meant to be pervasive, encompassing, and sweeping. So it covers payroll and vendor payments. So I would apply for it, get the maximum sums of money that you qualify for, and move forward, because it is meant for a long-term cure.
Gotcha. Let's speak. This is a great question from Carly. Just someone who has a 1099. They have a 1099 freelance business. So they derive 1099s from different sources. Can they apply for the economic injury loan with that paperwork? And they work out of their home and they use that particular address.
Yes. Yes, and yes. And they would go for bullet point number 2, because that's where the contractors would apply. And that would be the 1099 application process, bullet point number 2 on that same website.
Excellent. And I think that wraps up our questions right now, Andre. Maybe somebody else might have one that they want to submit now for Susheel.
Great. Yes, we probably have a time for 1 or 2 more questions. So if anyone wants to enter a final question or 2 into the chat bot, do so now.
Okay, I got one. Okay, here's one from Crystal. Our business is an LLC with my husband as a sole proprietor up until 2020. As of January 2020, we have changed to an S Corp with myself as percentage of ownership, meaning it went from the husband to the wife as being ownership. Which of us should apply?
As long as the ownership did not change post-COVID crisis, in other words, I believe the injury date is the 15th of February, the new entity, the way it stands as of January 1st, would be the way that the application would be forged.
Okay, so it's from that point on.
Correct. The ineligibility comes into play when midstream during the injury period, a change in ownership takes place. Now, unless it was contracted and was already in paper and inked and signed for, then you would submit that paperwork. But if it was January 1st, prior to the injury period, we're good to go.
Gotcha. Okay, here's a great question. Is it safe to put my banking information in the application?
Yes, because that's how you get your money.
Yeah, like in other words, it is a very secure, and at this point, that's the only way to be able to be reimbursed, correct?
Correct.
Here's another one we have from Jenny. They keep popping in. There was a mention of a grant application earlier in the call. Now my understanding is that there is not a grant opportunity, only the loan, and that's not the case. It's so if you can elaborate one more time. I think some are coming late to the conversation.
Right. There was never a grant application. There was always a loan application, and as part of the loan application, the first $10,000 was considered an advance against the proposed loan. And up to $10,000, not everyone gets the full $10,000. And if the loan for some reason is denied, you don't have to repay the grant. So there's never been an application. It's for a grant. There was always an application for a loan, and the sums of up to $10,000 was a grant that's being approved regardless of the outcome of the application for the loan.
Thank you. This is a great question because I came across this one from Greg. On the actual application, once you pass the declaration part, can you elaborate on the question? It's asking for nonprofit cost of operation for 12 months. That's very misleading for business owners because they're thinking, am I a nonprofit? But I read it as this is everything but your profit, meaning the cost of your operations.
I don't want to get into the adjectives piece. Please answer it as you think you need to answer it, and then ask them to give you a call so that they can address that issue on hand, because the individuality of a particular business owner may not apply to the rest of us.
Okay, thank you. We'll get some clarification on that one for Greg.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think there's some other questions on how to apply, and I think with the slides they'll be able to see the website for that. But I think I have one more too. If I am a single member LLC, well, that you already answered that one. Do I apply business? Yes, with less than 500 employees. Correct. That's where you do apply for Pierre.
And this may be a good time, Heidi, to repeat the website, sba.gov/disaster. Click apply for disaster assistance, and up comes a hyperlink that you click on. It'll take you right onto the Streamline website. You answer the questions that apply to you, and literally certify that you don't fit into one of those ineligible concerns. Hit continue and start filling out the rest of the application.
Okay, I'm going to try you on this question from Kenneth. If I'm under a state or federal contract and I'm still open and I'm paying my employees to work daily, most clients are unable to come in due to the virus confinement. Are they still eligible to apply for the grant or loan?
They are absolutely encouraged to apply. You've had economic disruption. You are paying your employees, and you have no revenues out of the equation, so you are suffering a gross profit margin disruption. Working capital maximum 6 months is being lent to the eligible concern. So yes, please apply sooner than later.
Okay, and we do have a duplication on that one question. I think we'll get the answer out too about not taking the loan, but you get the grant at that point. I think you addressed that one too. Did I understand correctly that we operate as an LLC with no employees and we handle all operations? So the maximum advance on the grant would be $1,000?
If you are the $10,000 number came as a result of the number of employees up to a maximum of. So if there's only one, the maximum is $1,000.
Okay, trying to think if I can't see any other questions. Is there any part of the economic injury loan that is forgivable outside of the grant?
No.
Okay, so it's not. Okay, here's another one. As a salon that doesn't have employees, but we have independent contractors, how would they handle a salon situation where would they qualify in paying those contractors under the loan?
The independent contractors would apply on the website for their own economic disruption that they were not able to gain. If the salon owner was supposed to get monies from the independent contractors because they contract the space out, they can ask for assistance because they'll say, hey, this particular contractor was going to pay me and they're not paying me, so that's economic disruption for me.
Got it. They're coming in now. So as an owner, we are considered an employee. When filling out the application, we answered as 0 employees, thinking that it was a number for payroll. Is that going to matter?
I don't think I understood the question clearly.
Okay. Like, in other words, when they're asking them on the application of how many employees they have, some independent contractors or sole proprietors do not think of themselves as an employee. But technically, in this case, they would be considered an employee, correct?
If they're listed on the payroll expense, yes, or they'll be under shareholder distribution, yes.
Would this be something that they could clarify with the loan officer at a later time so that they can be privy to the $1,000 of the grant per employee?
Listed under additional information, please.
Okay. Okay, great. And I think some of those we could maybe go through and return those answers back to them. And I think that wraps up the questions that I have.
Great. Thank you again, Susheel Kumar of the SBA Office of Disaster Assistance. Thank you again, Heidi Melanson of LSBDC at UL Lafayette. And thank you to all of our participants for joining us. As mentioned, this is rapidly developing. The information on this is rapidly developing. So we appreciate both Susheel and Heidi for being able to get this information out to everyone quickly. As mentioned, we will be sharing the video recording of today's webinar with everyone afterwards as soon as the video is generated. So we'll be getting that to you probably in the next 24 hours, along with the slide deck and other materials, other follow-up materials, and all of the partner organizations as well who help make today's webinar possible. We'll be sharing that information out as well. We hope that today's webinar was helpful, and we look forward to offering additional webinars going forward. I'm going to pull up our last slide right now, which has One Acadiana's COVID-19 resource page link on it. We're hosting all of our webinar materials on that webpage, and I know our partners are sharing all of the webinar materials out as well. So stay tuned for those follow-up materials, follow-up emails from us and our partners. And that does bring us to the end of today's webinar. Thank you once again to Heidi and Susheel, and everyone, please stay safe.
Thank you very much. Take care.